Today I'm sharing how to restyle and paint a leather tabletop. Furniture purists may cringe a little, but for the rest of us who love a fresh twist on a classic, if an old-looking leather tabletop is not your jam, here's an amazing makeover to inspire some ideas. I'm Denise from Salvaged Inspirations, and welcome back to my DIY furniture painting channel. Let's get started. So here's the French Provincial table I started with. My neighbor Sue was kind enough to point me in the direction of a furniture haul, and this is one of the pieces. And it's a lovely 1960s French Provincial side table with a varnished leather top and elegant gold tooling. And I went back and forth trying to decide whether to keep this leather top or give it a whole new look. To get this table ready for prep, after I removed the old sticky felt off the bottom, I used my impact driver and an extender to remove the tabletop from the table base. Also, this table had a faux drawer, so there was a French Provincial handle, which I also removed. And as for every makeover I do, I always make sure that I put all the hardware for every piece in one area, which is usually just a plastic cup. A little quick tip for those screws that don't want to come out, just use another screw to push them out. Now it was time for a super good cleaning. I used my white lightning, which I like mixing up with water in a spray bottle because I find it so much easier just to spray the furniture and then give it a good wipe down. The leather top had some staining, but other than that, this wood table is in really good condition. However, this maple stain that they used to use, it does come off and it does cause a lot of bleed through, so I'll address that in a moment. I brought the tabletop and the base into my sanding room and gave it a really good scuff sanding using a 180 sanding sponge. These sanding sponges are very flexible and they work really good around curved edges. The goal here wasn't to remove any of this finish, but just give it a light scuff for the primer to cling on to. I gave the base of this table a really good scuff sanding and then used a brush to wipe off all the dust. As I mentioned, I really didn't know whether to keep this leather top or not, but even after I tried my darndest to clean it up, I don't know if you can see here, but it still has some staining, like something was spilled on it, and I just could not get it out. So I was excited to give it a new, fresh look. So I brought out some bonding primer. Yes, you can paint over leather, so long as the paint will grip to it, and a bonding primer is a great way to do this. My two suggestions would be BIN shellac base primer, which sticks to anything and dries within, I would say, a half hour, 45 minutes. But if you have a little extra time and you don't want to bother with the fumes or the odor from the shellac, a great alternative is a water-based bonding primer, and the one I'm using here is called Bonding Boss. The caveat to this primer is that you have to wait overnight for it to do its thing. So you do need a day to be able to use this primer, bonding primer, properly. And if you're interested, I will leave a link in the description box below so you can go check it out. Once I had primed the leather and the tabletop, I moved on to the body and gave the full body a coat of primer as well. And again, this 4-inch roller works really well. If you have any details or you don't feel comfortable using a roller, I suggest a cheap, inexpensive chip brush so you can just throw it away after, because you don't want to be cleaning these brushes or these rollers in your sink because this bonding primer will just clog everything up. I waited 24 hours for the primer to dry. I came back the next morning and you can see the bleed through from this maple stain beating through the white primer. It passed the scratch test beautifully. This stuff is awesome. And it does correct stains, bleed through, any sort of staining, any sort of odors, but it often requires 2 coats to do so. So I went ahead and applied my second coat of primer. And once that all dried, it was time to fancy it up with some Would You Bend, which I just love. If you guys have been around the SI blog or here on YouTube, you know I am a huge fan of Would You Bend, and it's just so darn easy to use. So I chose a smaller design to cover up the holes where the hardware was. And to add these designs to your furniture makeover is super easy. You take either a heat gun or maybe a hair blower. You heat up the design until it's flexible and bendy. Then you add some wood glue onto the back and place the design onto your makeover where you'd like it. And here's a little tip that I like to do. You may notice that I'm placing the wood glue on the back of this Would You Bend using the same brush that I used for my bonding primer. I just wipe the excess primer off on a paper towel, and I'll just keep using the same chip brush because why throw it away when I can use it for something else? Often a really inexpensive dollar chip brush will last me a whole makeover for different applications. Once I have the Would You Bend in place, I use my heat gun to reheat it and press it in place. And also using a clamp is a good idea as well. I worked my way around using these corbels on the 4 legs, and these are beautiful. These are just gorgeous. They do take a little extra to heat up because they're quite thick. So safety first, of course. If you're having an issue with your hand getting warm, just be careful. Put it on a safe work surface. In my case, I'm using my floor, and heat it up that way. So I repeated the same for each leg. I would take the corbel, I would heat it up, add glue on the back, place it, heat it up again, clamp it. Oh, and I just wanted to mention that if your Would You Bend breaks, it's really easy to put back together. You heat them up so they're pliable, add the wood glue, and you can add it to the edges where it actually broke off as well. And then you just squish it together. You kind of put it in place and squish it together. And once painted or designed, you will never even know that it broke at all. Now for the fun part, painting time. I chose a new to me Dixie Belle paint color called Truffle. And I chose it because I thought it was a great match with this gorgeous rose tapestry decoupage rice paper. I gave it a really good mixing and then applied 2 coats of this color using my medium oval brush. This is a beginner-friendly paint because it's an all-in-one. It has a primer, obviously the paint color, and a top coat all included. I always suggest testing a new color in an inconspicuous area before you apply it to your full makeover, especially if you're matching it up to a design feature like I did here. However, I didn't take my own advice. I thought this color was going to lean more towards a brown green, and for some reason, I saw more of a green brown, which is perfectly fine. It goes beautifully with the rose tapestry regardless, but I'm just curious what you see more of. Color is so subjective, and I think even what it's paired up against, lighting, even the whole room decor can kind of change what you feel a color actually is. And I have to admit, that's half the fun of furniture painting, trying out all these new colors and new designs. It's never a dull moment because there's always something new to learn and something new to try. Again, I'll leave the brush I'm using, this new paint color, and all the supplies that I've used on this makeover in the description box down below. And here I am painting over the primed leather top. So yes, it accepts paint really beautifully. So long as you prep it properly, you can definitely paint over leather, easy peasy. And I could have just left it painted. It also would have looked beautiful just painted, kind of with that beveled edge. I really like how the leather has that beveled edge around the wood. I think it looks really sharp. It ended up taking 2 coats of truffle and it looked awesome, but I opted to use the decoupage paper as well, which I'll get to in a moment. I also wanted to mention that if you don't want a plain paint color over your leather top, you could also stencil it, you could decoupage it, you could gild it. There's so many avenues that you could take once you apply the paint over the leather. And again, half the fun with these makeovers are getting creative and trying something new. Rather than measure out the circle for this decoupage paper, I actually flipped it over and used a pencil and ran it against the beveled edge to get my cut line. This works super good, so long as you can hold the paper in place. It was probably, I probably should have taped it down with some painter's tape rather than just hold on to it, but it ended up all working out, thankfully. Once I had my cut line, I took a pair of scissors and cut the semicircle out. The rest of the circle needed to be done on a separate sheet of the paper. To cut the second piece out, I did try matching up the design as best I could. It wasn't an exact match, but the pattern is kind of abstract enough that unless you're looking or you know that there was a matchup, you would never notice. To apply this decorative paper, I used a satin top coat. And again, using an inexpensive chip brush, I added a layer onto the leather painted top. Then using the guidelines of the beveled edge, I placed the paper, making sure that it was right along that line and perfectly in place. And then I started smoothing it out with my hand. You can also use a putty knife or anything else flat to smooth it out. Just be very careful because once the paper adheres to the wet surface, it gets a little more delicate and can tear a little more easy. So until it dries, just be gentle with it. I did the exact same with the second piece. To seal it in place and harden it all up, I applied another coated top coat over top of this paper. And this is what really hardens this paper up and will make it stick. It's kind of like Mod Podge. I always say that wrong. Mod Podge. It's like the glue. It works the exact same way. It's also nice that this satin clear coat goes on milky, but it dries perfectly clear. So it's nice to see where you're applying it and if there's any place that you've missed because it goes on nice and milky. I left the tabletop to dry, and to highlight all these beautiful details on the base, I used antique gold gilding wax. And taking the inexpensive chip brush, I started applying it to all the wood you bend. And I have to say, I just love the way it looked on the truffle. I thought it was such a beautiful highlight with this color. I liked it so much, I brought out a small artist brush and put the antique gold into all the grooves along the skirt of this table and along the legs. I even debated adding some gold gilding along the beveled edge on the tabletop. But instead I opted to give it a more vintage vibe by using a paint wash. So I mixed a tiny little bit of truffle paint in with a little bit of water, and then using the chip brush again, I applied the wash to the decoupage paper. Now by this time it had dried. This is not wet, it is dry. So I applied a little bit, and this blended it in beautifully. I have to say, it gives it such a vintage feel, blends it in with the paint color so nicely. So I applied a little bit of the paint wash, and then I wiped it back with a shop towel or a paper towel. The very last step was screwing the tabletop back onto the base, turning it over, bringing it upstairs, and staging and styling. And just as a reminder, here's the before. And here's the after. I love the way this looks. This is more my style than the leather tabletop. I'd love to hear what you would have done with it. Please leave me a comment down below. Feel free to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you're notified with every new makeover. And until next project, have a fabulous week. Bye, guys.